Okay, so I thought we would do a little brief review, a grammar review. This should be review for you guys. I know some people haven't studied grammar extensively in high school, and some of this information might be new, or I think we all need to sort of brush up on our grammar once in a while. I know for myself, I use the grammar handbook to look up things all the time, so there's always a point that you can clarify or become more versed in and will be helpful when you are doing your essay writing. So when we think about sentence structure, the basic components that make up a sentence, we can break it down into two parts, the subject and the predicate. And this is really the basic elements of a sentence. So every sentence has to have a subject. So this is what or whom the sentence is about. What is sort of the sentence, the subject is the one doing the action, or is the topic that the sentence is about. The predicate is telling something about the subject. Would be where we would get the action of the sentence. The verb is the predicate. And we can identify it more clearly when we think about simple subjects and complete subjects. So in these examples, the words underlined are the complete subject, and the words that are in red are the simple subject. So the first example, a piece of pepperoni pizza would not satisfy her hunger. So the subject of this sentence is the piece of pizza, and all those other words that go around the piece are describing the subject. So some of us would want to highlight the word pizza, but it's actually the piece of pizza that is being discussed. And then the second one, my cheap boyfriend took me to McDonald's for our anniversary. Here it is the boyfriend, which is the action taking, sort of doing the action of the sentence, which is taking the person to McDonald's. So we have clearly sort of delineated subjects in these examples. But every sentence that you write needs to have a subject and then a verb or a predicate that tells us something about the subject. So if you just had the predicate or you just had the subject, that sentence would be incomplete. So you need both of those parts together to form a complete sentence. Predicates, so this would be the action, or it's telling something about the subject of the sentence. And you can isolate it as the verb or verbs that are being used in each sentence. So a simple predicate is the isolated verb, or sometimes it's sort of linking verbs together. And the complete predicate is the verb plus all the other words that modify and complete its meaning. And then you can also have a compound predicate, so this is two verbs in one sentence. So the examples used here, we decided to break up, and some students have trouble with English. So in this case, we have the simple predicate is in red, and then the complete predicate is underlined. So the subject of the sentence, we decided to break up, we is the subject, and then your main predicate, simple predicate is decided, and then complete predicate is decided to break up. And then second example, the subject of the sentence is some students, and then your predicate is have, and then your complete predicate is have trouble with English. Third example, I moped and pouted all night. I is the subject of the sentence, the one doing the action. And then the predicate is what is telling us about the subject, which is that the I moped and pouted all night. So that would be your complete predicate. We can also review clauses and phrases. So a clause is a subject-verb combination. So subject, he, she, we, and then plus a verb. Climbed, sang, walked. So these verbs can be conjugated any way, right? So you could have the past participle climbed, sang, walked, or you could have present, he was walking, or he walks. Um, so this would be a clause when you have a subject and a verb together in your sentence. An independent clause is a group of words with both a subject and a verb, and it can stand alone as a complete thought. So examples include Suzanne is a student, I finished washing the dishes, I am very hungry. So you know it's a complete thought if it has a subject, so I, Susan, these are all examples of subjects. And then it also has a verb combination and can stand on its own. So Suzanne is, that's our verb, is a student. So all of that together is a complete thought. I finished washing. Finished would be our verb. So I finished washing the dishes. It's a complete thought, can stand on its own. And then I am very hungry. So I am, that would be our clause, and then altogether I am very hungry is our independent clause that can stand on its own. So some clauses can't stand on their own as an independent sentence. These would be sort of dependent clauses. They need to be attached to an independent clause in order to be a complete thought. So even though these have similar components, they also have a subject and a verb, much like this one. There's additional words that make it a dependent clause. So if Suzanne is a student is not a complete sentence, it's not a complete thought. You need to add more information. While I did the dishes, also an incomplete thought. When I wake up, so you just want, it's sort of leading us towards more information. So that's how you know you have a dependent clause. Even if there is a subject and verb there, it cannot stand on its own. So a phrase is another group of words, but in this case there's no subject-verb combination. So it's just a group of words where there's no clear subject or verb together. So these are some examples. Up the mountain with great feeling, down by the riverside. So these are really sort of descriptive groups of words that can add complexity to your sentence. Most sentences will have some phrases in them. Complex sentences do. So here are some examples where phrases are used in place of the subject. So here we have, helping the neighbors was an all-day affair. Helping the neighbors is standing in place of the subject of the sentence and is what the sentence is about. So helping the neighbors was is our verb. So this would be called a gerund or noun phrase. And then second example, the sun shining brightly, she left the house without her umbrella. So we have two phrases here, the sun shining brightly and without her umbrella. But they cannot stand on their own. They need a subject, verb, clause to be attached to. So this is sort of an example of how we make more complex sentences by adding phrases and clauses together and building our sentences in component parts. So these are some examples of problem sentences that you might end up using in your writing, and this is, you know, it's a fragment if it doesn't have the subject-verb combination and it can't stand on its own, so it's an incomplete thought. So the first example, happy child skipping down the street. So it sounds close to a sentence, but this is more of a image that we have that is incomplete. So if you said, the happy child skipped down the street, we're just changing a couple of sort of word choices and the verb in particular to make it a more complete thought. So you want to make sure you're using the correct verb choice, conjugating it correctly in order to make it fit the sentence. The second one, since the dawn of time, that would be a phrase and it can't stand on its own, so this needs more information. So since the dawn of time, comma, complete the thought. Humankind has enjoyed sleep and food. Whatever, right? So you need more information. It needs a subject-verb combination, a clause to make it stand on its own. Third one, Daniel, a happy-go-lucky man who loves life. So this one you're missing, you have a subject, Daniel, you have information about him, you just don't have a proper verb in there, right? So you need the predicate. So you could have Daniel is a happy-go-lucky man who loves life. So just by adding is, you're adding a verb and making this a complete thought. Fourth one, although ice cream is better, you have a subject and a verb, but we have the word although, so this would be a dependent clause. So the word although sort of makes it into a subordinate clause or dependent clause where it can't stand on its own, so you need to have more information. So although ice cream is better, comma, I prefer chocolate cake. Something like that. And then the last one, running down the street, the child tripped and scraped his knee. So the second part of this two-part thought here, the child tripped and scraped his knee, that would be a complete thought. We have the child, which is our subject, and then we have two predicates, tripped, a compound predicate, tripped and scraped his knee. So that can stand on its own, but running down the street is not a complete sentence. It's lacking a clause, so it needs a subject verb to attach to. So you could just have running down the street, comma, the child tripped and scraped his knee. So that makes much more sense, and we don't have a fragment in our writing. So here are some examples of comma splices or run-ons. This is another problem that is very common in first year writing. So the first sentence is a run-on. So we know it's a run-on if we have a complete thought attached to another complete thought, and there's just commas between those two sentences. So the student was happy with his feedback. That could stand on its own as a independent clause. Our subject, the student, the predicate was happy with his feedback. You could have a period there and this would make sense. This student has had, or adds a comma, however, comma, he was still hesitant to publish his work. So he was still hesitant to publish his work. This is also a complete sentence. He is the subject, was still hesitant to publish his work as the predicate. So we do have a transition word, however, stuck in there, and only some words can be used to join two independent clauses together. However is not one of them. So you need to have stronger punctuation that separates these two sentences. So I would add a period or a semicolon in front of however. So it looks like this now. The student was happy with his feedback, semicolon, however, he was still hesitant to publish his work. So a semicolon is used when you have two connected thoughts, but they're both complete sentences. So they're both independent clauses that can stand on their own, but they're interconnected. So that's when we can use a semicolon. You could also, like I said, put a period and then capitalize however. That would also be acceptable. Next one, Daniel loved his wife. He lavished her with attention and gifts on a daily basis. This would be an example of a run-on sentence and needs to be broken up into two complete independent clauses.